to get two kings in a picture is not something you do every day. That just looks like a really young, nice, happy family, and it's a lovely picture, and the dog's brilliant as well.
I can remember it clearly. It was the middle of August, normally known as the silly season because nothing much goes on. And it was editorial conference, normally about 20 people in there. Picture editor put the pictures up on the screen, and what is normally quite a raucous event conference was suddenly incredibly silent.
On the 22nd of August, the Daily Mirror took the bold step of devoting its front page to this scene of a sarin gas attack on a village east of Damascus in Syria.
I walked out of conference and physically started to draw the front page. What was so striking about the picture is that it was a picture of a number of dead children lying there, but to all intents and purposes they didn't look like they were dead. They looked like they were asleep.
It's so powerful because it's children, and because we can all imagine our children or our friends' children in such a way. These kids looked like they were in bed. They looked like they were asleep, and yet they weren't. And it's stunning to think that this was happening in a modern world. And using dead people on the front page of a newspaper is never taken lightly.
The Mirror has a proud tradition of shock front pages, or even whole editions. Because the victims look so peaceful in this picture, the headline had to be explicit.
I originally wrote a headline that was a lot softer, actually. From memory, I think it said "The Sleeping Dead," which is a very powerful headline, no question. But what it didn't really do was get across really quickly and really directly what we're talking about here, and that is dead children and chemical weapons. And I think it was Peter Willis, who's the weekday editor of the Mirror, who sort of said quite strongly that now they're gassing children, and that's it. Now they're gassing children. It was as simple as that.
How you make stories accessible to people it could be me. I could be there. And the most important thing with Syria, it's when you feel empathy with that picture, that person in the picture, that person with just a dog, that person, the devastation, that person hanging by their fingernails. It's at that point that you get it and you understand it, because it could be you.
The pictures helped keep Syria on the political agenda. The Prime Minister recalled Parliament to ask for support for military action in principle, but was defeated. Assad agreed to take his chemical weapons out of use, but the fighting goes on. Lloyd Embley's decision was brave, but in hindsight, he knows it could have been braver.
I do have one regret, and that is that I didn't have the conviction to wipe out the entire front page. Right at the top of the front page, there was a Simon Cowell blurb and a Colleen blurb, and if I were doing it again, I would have taken the whole of the front page. I think that probably indicates how we possibly thought it might impact on our sales. But that's the regret.
Somali militant group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack on a shopping centre in the Kenyan capital Nairobi. The Red Cross in Kenya says at least 30 people have been killed, including some children.
September brought terror to somewhere that was both far away and yet somehow close to home, a shopping centre.
Couldn't believe what I saw. The most striking image was of the man trying to hug He hugged his wife, and they're lying in their pool of blood, like he wanted to protect her. It was really difficult to see.
Goran Tomasevic has been photographing war zones for more than 20 years. But nothing he'd witnessed in Kosovo, Afghanistan, Libya or Syria prepared him for what he saw at his local shopping mall in Nairobi, Kenya, on the 21st of the month.
I was surprised this happening in a shopping mall. I could see immediately it was not a war, it was executions, and it was slaughtering people.
Goran, seen here on CCTV, caught the moment when 4-year-old Portia Walton ran into the arms of one of the rescuers.
And I just turned around and I saw the small girl running. And after that, saw her mother running after her with another child. It was very, very emotional, basically. You see, they are in fear and they're struggling to save their children.
The attack left 67 people dead, including 6 from the UK.
These set of pictures actually say a lot more than the words did on this, because you look at the images and you realise this could have been you. This could happen anywhere. And the trauma and the pain and the children's faces and just the sheer panic, you can't say that in words, and that's why these pictures are so strong.
Terrorists understand the proliferation of images, and they understand if they do something, it doesn't have to be that big a thing. So long as it's horrific, so long as it's a shock, so long as it's terrifying. We all, in some sense, collude with it. All of us, from television companies and newspapers, right through down to ordinary people who might take a picture, camera phone picture, or might share a picture. We can now feast on images as never before. And terrorism is the dark side of that feast.
Police in Greece are trying to identify a 4-year-old girl with blonde hair who they believe may have been snatched from her parents. They found her in a Roma settlement last Wednesday.
In October, the Greek police began to circulate a photograph of a blonde, blue-eyed girl known as Maria they thought had been stolen from her parents. The image reminded editors and readers how much the country hoped another blue-eyed girl would one day be found.
Why we even looked at that story, and frankly we probably wouldn't have done if it didn't have any echoes of Madeleine McCann, it makes you think again about, well, where do these little children come from? How did no one notice? And that's how that picture, because immediately you're thinking, there's something not quite right here, so I need to know.
The mystery of Maria has been solved. The family of the blonde Roma girl, who's made the front pages all around the world, has been traced.
A DNA test later proved that the child was Roma and hadn't been abducted after all. Her mother told reporters she had given Maria to another family because she was too poor to look after her. But with Roma scare stories at a premium, that wasn't what the press wanted to hear, and they largely ignored it.
Hundreds of thousands of people across the Philippines have been forced from their homes by the impact of what could be the most powerful storm on record. Typhoon Haiyan flattened houses, brought down power lines and caused floods.
When Typhoon Haiyan struck the coast of the Philippines in November, over 6,000 people were killed. It was the worst typhoon in the country's history. When the Times needed to decide what picture to put on their front page, it was this photo of an unnamed boy that caught the eye of picture editor Sue Connolly.
You should always look at the bigger picture, and that sounds a bit corny, but who is he? Look at him, he's got a black eye, he's got nothing. Look behind him, it's desolate, absolutely desolate. Where's he going to sleep? These are the questions that I'm asking, and I'm putting that picture on the front. So what are the readers asking? They want to know who he is, you know. And we did try and find him, but we couldn't.
But in this digital age, anything is possible. After the photo appeared on an appeals poster, an online campaign started. A Dutch journalist, Wouter van Cleef, tracked down the boy with the help of Facebook users. Joshua Cater is 11 years old. When the storm surge struck, he held onto a piece of plywood to keep himself afloat. His mother and sister died, but his father survived.
You wouldn't walk past someone in the street and leave them lying there. You pick them up and help them. And that's what good photography is about, is that it explains it to you, draws you in, makes you look at a picture, makes you think about it.
As the year came to an end on a busy Friday night in Glasgow, the BBC quoted Twitter, reporting a helicopter had crashed onto the Clutha Music Bar. 10 people were killed, and there were many more seriously injured. A packed dance floor and a sudden impact from above. An image that will live with many for years.
Sometimes news has to make you want to turn away. Sometimes news has to give you an uncomfortable truth. And sometimes news has to make you put yourself into a position that you wouldn't want to be in. And those pictures were exactly that. A complete horror in a very ordinary situation. Something that you wouldn't imagine would happen has happened. And that's what pictures can do. That's the power of a news picture. It can put you in a place where you don't want to be, and yet you can't help but think about.
Also in December, those notorious pictures, taken outside a London restaurant, were back on the front pages. Charles Saatchi and Nigella Lawson, now divorced, appeared as witnesses in the prosecution of 2 of their former assistants. Lurid accusations have flown back and forth. In court, Nigella Lawson admitted that she had occasionally taken cocaine, which provoked further speculation about the incident at Scott's. But both she and her ex-husband denied they had been arguing about drugs. She said he had reacted to a remark about wanting grandchildren one day. The last image of the year dated back more than 2 decades and showed the outstanding impact Nelson Mandela made in life and in death.
Nelson Mandela is overleden, oud-president van...
Nelson Mandela, the father of modern South Africa and the country's first black president, has died. He was 95.
Regardless of who took them, international news crews or the people who came to pay their respects, these pictures paid tribute to a man whose image remains the most enduring of our times. Only his death could bring so many of the world's leaders and celebrities to one place, and yet mean so much to millions of us in all corners of the globe.
And it was precisely because he could admit to imperfection, because he